Chapter 351. That evening at Peaceful Medical Center, Natasha waltzed in through the doors happily with 2 bottles of wine in her hand. Honey, I'm back. Look what I brought. These are aged wines, I'm sure you'll love them. All of a sudden, the smile on her face froze as she noticed that not only was Dustin not inside, but there were also 2 strangers in there instead. Gregory, who was usually in a drunken stupor, now sat upright with a stern expression on his face. How peculiar. Mr. Jones, who are they? Natasha's curiosity was piqued. You're back, lass. Here, let me introduce them. This one here is Dustin's father, and this one is an old pal of mine. Gregory gestured to Rufus and Albert, respectively, as he introduced them to Natasha. Dustin's father. Natasha's eyes lit up. Oh, so my father-in-law is here. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. As she spoke, she immediately got up and poured them each a cup of tea. Then, she smiled sweetly and said to Rufus, "Please have some tea, father." What? Rufus took a while to adapt to such enthusiasm. Young lady, may I know who you might be? As this is our first time meeting, it's only expected that you do not know me, father. My name is Natasha Harmon, and I'm Dustin's wife, so I'm your daughter-in-law. Natasha beamed brightly with confidence. My daughter-in-law. Rufus was taken aback momentarily. Then, it quickly dawned on him what exactly was going on. He broke out into a hearty laugh. That's great, that's great. How lucky my son is to have such an enchanting wife like you. This is amazing. As expected of a man from the Rhys family, Dustin managed to snag 2 charming ladies without anyone knowing. He sure had his way with women. Rufus was delighted. Oh, you flatter me too much, father. I'm the lucky one to have Dustin. He's such an amazing man. I'd say he's quite a catch. Natasha chuckled. Oh, is that lad really such a fine man? Rufus teased. Of course he is. Natasha did not go easy on her praise. Not only is he capable intellectually, but he's also skilled in martial arts. Besides, his medical skills are top-notch. It seems like there isn't anything he can't do. And to top it off, he's such a gentle and caring man who shoulders his responsibilities well. You don't come by men like him these days. Ha ha ha. You sure know your man well. Rufus chortled loudly when he heard his son being praised. He beamed so brightly that his wrinkles showed, but pride was evident on his face. He was beyond himself with joy. What was more delightful than hearing one's own child being praised by others? Of course, it goes without saying that you must have taught him well for him to turn out into such an amazing person, father. Now that I think about it, ultimately, you're the one who has the wisdom to raise such a brilliant son. Natasha took the opportunity to praise Rufus as well. Ha ha ha. Rufus was truly over the moon. He laughed so much that his cheeks started to hurt. He had never been so happy in the past 10 years. Albert, who sat beside him, smiled brightly too. He was happy for Rufus that he had yet another daughter-in-law. Oh, you do have your way with your words, young lady. Since you called me father, I must give you a present. After Rufus calmed down from his joyful laughter, Rufus took out a dagger and handed it to Natasha. This dagger has been by my side for many, many years. It shall be my gift to you to mark our first meeting. This is too precious. I cannot have it. Natasha waved her hands in protest. With her sharp eyes, she could tell at a glance that the dagger wasn't just any other dagger. Just the gemstones embedded on the hilt for decoration alone were worth an exorbitant amount, much less the blade itself. Have it. It isn't worth much. It'd be good to carry it around as protection, Rufus chuckled. Seeing how understanding his daughter-in-law was, he would gladly give her the stars above if she so wished, let alone just a dagger. Just accept it, lass. This is your father-in-law's affection towards you. Mr. Jones winked at her. The dagger was listed as one of the top 10 blades in the world. Even the sword whisperer, who was obsessed with swords, had requested to have the dagger multiple times before, but Rufus had never been willing to part with it. All right, then. Thank you, Father. Natasha smiled sweetly at him and quickly stashed the dagger away safely. Then, they both had a good chat and quickly bonded with each other, so they decided to just address each other as father and daughter, respectively. For a moment, all was warm and cozy in the medical center. Natasha, when did you come? Right then, Dustin, who was just done shopping, entered. There was a smile on his face when he saw Natasha, however, when he caught sight of Rufus, his smile died down. Oh. Not too long ago. And what a coincidence that I met Father. Why did you not tell me that Father was coming? I had nothing prepared. Natasha whined. Had she known that Dustin's father would drop by, she would have prepared some presents for him to win him over and gain her future father-in-law's favor. Chapter 352. Natasha, you haven't had dinner yet, have you? Come on, I'll treat you to dinner. Dustin did not answer her and changed the topic instead. Now that you mention it, I am feeling a bit hungry. Father, shall we go grab a bite? Natasha turned around to ask Rufus. Don't worry about them. We'll go get dinner, just the two of us, Dustin insisted. Well, Natasha paused. She could sense that something was off between the two. Natasha, go ahead and enjoy your meal together. We, old folks, won't tag along and ruin your fun. Run along now. Rufus smiled and nodded at her. All right, Father. We'll be quick and buy some food back for you. Natasha did not try to pry further. After she made sure they were all right, she left with Dustin. All was quiet in the car before Natasha broke the silence. Your father, did you have a fallout with him? A fallout? Dustin laughed dryly. If only it was that simple, things would be much easier. So then what is it? Can you tell me? Natasha coaxed softly. She had never seen such a melancholy expression on Dustin. Say, if a man's wife and son were harmed, and he did absolutely nothing about it, do you even still consider him a man? Dustin did not straight up tell Natasha what had happened between him and his father, but he threw her a hypothetical situation instead. Well, could it be possible that the man had his dilemmas too? Natasha asked warily. As long as he puts his mind to it, there isn't anything that he can't do. Dilemmas. They're just excuses. Dustin shook his head. As I have not experienced what you've been through, I'm not in a position to offer you any advice. However, I do believe that one day, all truths will come to light. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Where do you want to have dinner tonight? Dustin changed the topic yet again. Shall we go to Hillview Restaurant? Natasha suggested with a smile. Sure. Dustin nodded. Then, with a step on the accelerator, they sped off towards Hillview Restaurant. As the car went around a bend, there was suddenly a loud bang. They seemed to have hit something. Oh no. We've run someone over. Natasha paled. She saw clearly through the rearview mirror that an old lady was groaning in pain in the middle of the road. Are you all right, Mom? The moment Dustin pulled the car over, Natasha rushed out of the car and hurried over to check on the old lady. But just as her hand touched the old lady's shoulder, the old lady leaped up and pulled out a dirk, intending to stab Natasha with it. Utterly shocked by the turn of events, Natasha failed to duck in time. Just as she thought that would be the end of her, a hand reached over and grabbed the blade of the dirk. With a forceful jerk, the dirk snapped into two. Who sent you? Dustin stared icily at the old lady, chucking the blade away as it clattered to the ground. You have a bounty of 100 billion on your head, and she has 10 billion on hers. What a waste. I was just inches away from having $10 billion in my pocket. The old lady cackled maniacally, showing off her yellow teeth. A bounty killer. Dustin squinted. Edwin Hummer had offered a bounty of $100 billion to have Dustin killed. Though they had put an end to the Hummers, Edwin Hummer was still alive, so the bounty had yet to be called off. The old lady sniggered evilly. Since you know that I'm a bounty killer, then you should understand that today is the day you meet your maker. You wish to kill us? Just you alone? Dustin asked contemptuously. There's such a huge bounty for you. Of course, I'm not the only one after you. Look around you. The old lady lifted her chin to the side. Dustin looked in the direction she signaled to find that they had been surrounded. He could see that 8 figures were closing in on them. Though there weren't many of them, they were all adept assassins. I know you're gifted, young man, so I deliberately sent for the 8 giants today. Skilled as you may be, you stand no chance against them. The more you struggle, the more suffering you'll put yourself through, so don't even think about escaping, the old lady taunted. The 8 giants. Are they powerful? Dustin was unfazed. Ha! Are they powerful? Truth be told, young man, once the 8 giants have their eyes set on someone, not a single one of their targets has ever escaped alive. She announced confidently. The moment she finished speaking, Dustin flicked his wrist, and a loud whooshing sound was heard. Immediately, the 8 giants stopped in their tracks and crashed heavily to the ground. On closer inspection, there was a silver needle buried smack in the middle of each of their foreheads. All 8 of them died right then and there. Chapter 353. The old lady stood frozen in place as she watched the 8 giants crash to the ground with dull thuds, one after another. All the calmness and confidence she had earlier on had completely vanished into thin air and were instead replaced by downright fear. Those were the 8 giants. They were renowned bounty hunters who had yet to fail before this. Ever since they set foot in the field, they had been revered by all and had never missed a single target. No matter how great their opponents were, they had been able to wipe them out without breaking a sweat. She had thought that with the 8 giants working alongside her, everything would have gone smoothly without any hiccups. Who would have guessed that they'd be defeated in a matter of seconds? They did not even have time to react. What freak of nature was this man standing before her? Those are the 8 giants that you've been harping on about. Pretty weak, aren't they? Dustin shook his head. How dare mere mortals who had yet to achieve divinity dream about assassinating him? Why you? What tactics did you use? The old lady was so flustered that she stumbled several steps backward. Panic was evident on her face. I have only one question for you. How many more of you bounty killers are after me? I don't know. We bounty killers work independently. That's enough. You can go straight to hell now. Before she could even complete her sentence, Dustin sent another silver needle flying with a flick of his wrist. She, too, dropped dead on the spot. The Bounty Killers was an extremely mysterious organization of bounty hunters. Every individual in the organization was an expert at what they did, and each one was more powerful than the one before. He had to call off the bounty on him and Natasha as soon as possible, or it was going to mean more trouble for them. Just then, his phone started to ring. He answered the call to find that it was from Maximus. Dustin. Things are looking ugly here. The boulder thorns have surrounded the medical center. The boulder thorns. Dustin frowned. Were they sent by Royal Valor? You're right. Royal Valor sent all their elites along too. Even their best warriors are here. They're here to kill you. Go hide somewhere, and whatever you do, remember to stay away from here. Maximus warned him. They were severely outnumbered. As powerful as Dustin was, he could not hold up against all of Royal Valor's warriors surrounding him. I know what to do. Take Caitlin and bring her out of there. Dustin ended the call. What's wrong? Natasha asked worriedly from beside him. Nothing much. There's just a minor complication over at the medical center. You head back to Park Place first. I'll make it up for dinner tomorrow. Dustin smiled at her assuredly. Okay. You take care. Natasha nodded at him and drove off without any further questions. What an exciting evening. Who would have guessed that Royal Valor would join in on the fun? Dustin scoffed. He hailed a cab and went straight back to Peaceful Medical Center. Boulder Thorn was a major sect of the Balerno martial arts discipline. Dustin had intended to keep things peaceful between them, but since they refused to back off, he would gladly face them head on. At that moment, there were more than 20 cars pulled up around Peaceful Medical Center, surrounding the place tightly. All surveillance cameras in the vicinity were destroyed, and every alley in the area was blocked by Boulderthorn Guild members. Not a single person could get past their barricade. Several hundred elite Boulderthorn Guild members stood at the door. A murderous aura surrounded them. They looked like they were prepared to annihilate whoever and whatever that stood between them and the goal. Maximus Kane. I'm asking you this for the last time, where is Dustin? A young man in a white shirt stood at the forefront of the crowd with the tip of his sword pointing squarely at Maximus. The person was none other than Kirin Tovolo, the second most senior guild member of Royal Valor. After the death of Tatum Thunders, he became the ace of Royal Valor. In order to win the guild members over and for them to accept him, he had to avenge the previous ace of the guild. Kirin Tovolo, if you must know, Dustin has already left Swinton. If there's anything you need from him, you can come to me. Maximus declared loudly. Ha! You ignorant fool. I see you're the type who refuses to cry until death stares you in the face. Kirin was infuriated. With a light tap of his feet, he swiftly leaped towards Maximus in an attempt to take him down. I have long since heard that you're adept with a sword. Let's have a look at how good you are, then. Maximus wasn't daunted by him in the least. As a burst of energy coursed through his body, the sword that he carried with him on his back was unsheathed, and with a single-handed forward motion, the sword launched through the air, aimed straight at Kirin's chest. Kirin let out a grunt and sliced through the air with his sword. He brought down a shower of sparks on himself as his sword made contact with Maximus' sword, which sent it flying. Maximus sprang upwards with a whoosh, and accurately caught his sword midair. Then, with a quick flick of his wrist, he used the illusory sword technique. As the name suggested, it was a technique that cast an illusion on its opponent, causing a momentary distraction. With Dustin's guidance, Maximus advanced in his swordsmanship. Now that he had mastered the illusory sword technique, he used it and cast an illusion of countless swords flying around in the air, all aiming at Kirin. It was an extremely impressive technique. Superior skills indeed. No wonder you're behaving so arrogantly. Kirin shot Maximus a glare and no longer held back, unleashing all that he had. In a split second, the calmness of the night sky was broken by the sparks of swords coming into contact with each other and the whoosh of rapid movements. The crowd of elite Boulderthorn Guild members instinctively backed off to make space for them. Chapter 354. Amid a fierce battle between two divine-level masters, ordinary warriors would never stand a chance to approach them. While the battle was in full swing, Rufus, Gregory, and Albert were happily drinking inside the medical clinic. Used to such chaotic scenes, they naturally paid no mind to such minor scuffles. On the other hand, Caitlin, who was pouring them drinks, wasn't as calm as them. She anxiously peered through the doorway, her worries evident. How could Maximus handle all the opponents alone? Only if Mr. Rhys was here. As soon as this thought crossed her mind, Caitlin immediately shook her head. No. Those people were here for Dustin. If Dustin were here, things would only get more dangerous. Kid, stop fretting over there. That lad will be fine for now. Bring us another bottle of wine. Gregory shouted. All right. I'm coming. Upon hearing his words, Caitlin promptly retrieved another bottle of wine from the counter. Observing the calm demeanor of the three men, she frowned and curiously asked, Mr. Jones, aren't you all worried at all? If those bad guys were to barge in, you would be in danger. What's there to worry about? Life's a cheap thing, and if we die, Gregory answered casually. Gosh, don't be such a doomsayer. Caitlin pouted and said solemnly, Mr. Jones, you will live a long and healthy life. Even if there's danger, I will protect you. With that, she grabbed a mop nearby and acted like a bodyguard, vowing to defend the medical center. Her actions caused the three men to laugh in amusement. She's truly an interesting girl. Rufus grinned. Don't worry. None of us will die today. Really? Caitlin's eyes lit up. Of course. Do you think I would lie to you about such matters? Rufus chuckled and pointed at Albert. See this old man here. He's a powerful guy. Dealing with these minions is a piece of cake. For him. Dash. Is that so? Caitlin sized Albert up. She seemed skeptical. He was an elderly man in his 60s or 70s, walking with a cane. How could he withstand a fight? The wind could even blow him down. After observing everyone, she realized she was the youngest and strongest of the four of them. Indeed, it seemed like the responsibility to protect them all would fall on her shoulders. With this in mind, Caitlin raised the mop again and stood guard at the entrance. Clearly, she didn't trust these three oldies. Rufus, these minions are indeed nothing to fear. However, people have found out about your arrival in Swinton. I guess Stroikwa will not let this opportunity slip by, Albert suddenly said, his tone serious. Are you suggesting that someone will come to assassinate me? Rufus raised his glass and took a sip. Yes. Albert nodded. As the Prince of West Lucosia, Rufus stood like an invincible barrier. He could single-handedly intimidate the gods of Stroikwa. If Rufus encountered an assassination attempt, it would undoubtedly lead to a border conflict. In West Lucosia, there were numerous experts to protect him. No matter how powerful Stroikwa was, they would not find the slightest loophole. However, the situation was different in Swinton. Without the protection of the West Lucosia army and death warriors, it presented a rare opportunity for Stroikwa to carry out an assassination attempt. Therefore, Albert was sure there would be chaos in the coming days. Let them try all they want. It's not like it's the first time, Rufus shrugged, seemingly unconcerned. Even in West Lucosia, assassination attempts would occur every now and then. So, of course, it would happen in Swinton. Outside the medical center, the duel between the two swordsmanship prodigies had reached a white-hot stage. Both sides had sustained injuries, and it was difficult to determine the victor. Maximus' movements were fast and accurate. He was particularly fierce and used ruthless techniques. In terms of swordsmanship alone, Maximus was superior to Kirin. However, Kirin had higher cultivation and was in a more stable state. He was closer to divinity. Thus, their battle was neck and neck. When did this kid become so powerful? Standing among the crowd, Luther watched the two fight with a look of astonishment on his face. Kirin was a divine-level martial artist and a sword prodigy. Yet, he couldn't defeat Maximus. Did Maximus already reach divinity as well? HMPH. What a waste of time. Meanwhile, Clement looked displeased as he peered through the window of his car at the battle ahead. He had thought that his second disciple could easily claim victory, but he hadn't expected him to be unable to handle a mere minion. Seeing the deadlock persist, Clement flicked his wrist, and a chess piece precisely struck Maximus' knee. Maximus groaned and fell to his knees. In that instant, Kirin thrusted his sword at him. Chapter 355. Go to hell. Noticing an opening, Kirin immediately seized the opportunity and fiercely swung his sword down. At that moment, a silver needle suddenly appeared, flew past the crowd, and struck Kirin's sword. Clang. With a clang, Kina's long sword shattered. What? Who the hell did that? Kirin quickly retreated and had his guard up. The fact that someone could use the needles as a weapon and break his sword demonstrated the profound internal energy of the assailant. To bully the weak with strength is one thing, but resorting to sneak attacks as well. Are all the people from Boulderthorn so despicable? A cold voice came from behind. Everyone turned around and saw a handsome man slowly walking out of the shadows. He then stood tall under a street lamp. It was none other than Dustin, who had just arrived. Sir Lincoln, that's the guy. That's Dustin. He's the one who murdered Tatum's nephew. Seeing the newcomer, Luther immediately roared, "Kill him! Kill him quickly! We must avenge Tatum!" Brody and Oliver stood up, their aura intimidating. Ever since their father was crippled, the status of their lineage has plummeted. Naturally, they harbored a deep hatred toward Dustin, the one responsible for everything. Young man. So you're the one who killed my two beloved disciples. Clement narrowed his eyes, his face filled with hostility. I killed Joshua, but not Tatum. I only crippled him, Dustin said calmly. Nonsense. You killed Tatum. Brody shouted angrily. That's right. We saw through you a long time ago. You took advantage of Tatum's severe injuries and launched a sneak attack. How despicable and shameless. Oliver chimed in. I wouldn't have gone through all the trouble if I wanted to kill Tatum. I would have finished him off directly in the arena. But of course, if you don't believe me, you can assume I killed him, Dustin replied indifferently. Looking at the current situation, Dustin knew there was no hope of clearing up the misunderstanding. No matter how much he explained, it would be futile. Hey, Sir Lincoln. Did you hear that? This brat is extremely arrogant. If we don't tear him limb from limb, how will Boldathron continue to stand on in the martial world? Luther and his two sons continued to fuel the flames. Young man. According to the rules of the martial world, a life for a life. If you offer your neck for the kill, I can give you a quick death. Clement declared. Go ahead if you want to fight. Stop talking so much nonsense, Dustin replied rudely. Not bad, kid. You're surely arrogant. Clement's face darkened. If I personally take action, others will accuse me of bullying the weak with strength. So today, let my disciples have a go at you. If you manage to survive by some stroke of luck, I'll spare your life. Formation. With a single gesture from Clement, 7 of Keen's disciples stepped forward and surrounded Dustin from all sides. Those disciples were the best in royal valor. All of them were powerful. Among the 7, 3 had already reached divinity, while the other 4 were high-level martial artists. Royal valor was truly showcasing its experts. Dustin, I'll help you. Maximus quickly realized that something was amiss. No. Dustin raised his hand and rejected Maximus' offer. I want to see how formidable royal valor, one of the 8 sects of Boldathron, truly is. HMPH. Today, I'll make you admit defeat willingly. The star-shifting technique. Transform. Keen shouted, and suddenly, the 7 disciples changed their positions. They trapped Dustin in a peculiar formation. The Big Dipper array. Ha ha. This brat is doomed. Luther's face couldn't help but light up with joy when he saw the scene before him. The Big Dipper array was a well-known formation in martial arts. In the formation, each of the 7 participants took the positions of Dubé, Merrick, Fector, Megraz, Alioth, Miser, and Alcade. With this, they would trap their enemy. The 7 individuals would continuously move in an unending cycle as the formation changed. Once the formation took shape, no one could break it. Attack. Keen attacked from the front with 3 people, while the other 3 attacked from behind. Chapter 356. Displaying a perfect balance between offense and defense, the 7 individuals worked together seamlessly. They complemented each other with no discernible flaws. As the formation came into motion, the sharp sword-like aura was formed and ran rampant instantly. A swirling gust of wind sent the sand and stones flying. Interesting. Dustin frowned. His figure flickered as he dodged. He moved like a fish swimming in the water, constantly evading attacks within the sea of swords. It seemed dangerous, yet he managed to dodge every strike at critical moments. The sharp, sword-like aura grazed his body, but it couldn't harm him in the slightest. Brody and Oliver clenched their fists, their expressions filled with excitement. They would loudly cheer whenever Dustin seemed to be in danger. However, they gritted their teeth with hatred when they saw him narrowly escape. Calm down. The Big Dipper array grows more powerful as it faces stronger opponents. Once the offensive is in full swing, it becomes like a raging wave, one wave after another, and it becomes unstoppable. The longer he drags it out, the more dangerous it becomes for that brat, Luther explained calmly. In his eyes, Dustin's defeat was only a matter of time. Dustin, catch the sword. Maximus called out to Dustin. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, Maximus quickly thought of a clever idea. He threw his sword directly into the middle of the deadly formation. All right. Dustin stepped on the ground and instantly soared into the air before grabbing the sword in his hand. He must be seeking death. Seeing Dustin leap into the air, Kirin smirked. He commanded the sword formation to attack from bottom to top. In a battle between experts, showing weaknesses was the last thing one would want to do. Being in the air without support was like presenting oneself as an easy target. Ha! Looking at the sword formation beneath him, Dustin sneered disdainfully. He forcefully swung his sword downward. Swish! Like a meteor descending from the heavens, the shining sword slashed into the formation. Clang! The formation was instantly shattered into pieces. Kirin and his 7 companions were forced to retreat because of the powerful force. All of them were stunned. How is this possible? Kirin furrowed his brows. The strength of the Big Dipper array laid in harnessing the power of 7 individuals to launch a combined attack. There was only one possibility of the formation breaking. And that was someone with strength surpassing the combined force of the 7 members of the Big Dipper array. Did Dustin's strength far exceed their expectations? No. It couldn't be possible. It must be an accident. Cycle of the sun and moon. Change formation. Kirin shouted loudly, commanding everyone to change their formation again. The Big Dipper array had 7 variations and styles. It could attack, defend, and move at any speed. It was ever-changing and unpredictable. I'm just playing around with you. Are you even taking this fight seriously? Dustin said, losing interest as he watched Kirin and the others scattering away. He swung his long sword. The sword flashed and shot out of his hand instantly, heading toward the chests of the 7 guys. Defend! The faces of the 7 individuals fell slightly. They instinctively raised their swords to block Dustin's attack. Soon, Dustin's sword struck them, and all 7 of their swords shattered to the ground. The relentless force of the impact sent the 7 individuals flying backward and coughing up blood. One person was severely injured, while the rest died on the spot. For a moment, everyone at the scene fell into complete silence. Chapter 357. As they looked at the 6 corpses on the ground and Kirin, who was heavily injured and coughed up blood, all the disciples of Boulder Thorn were dumbfounded. They never expected Dustin would break the Big Dipper array and simultaneously kill 6 top-notch experts from Royal Valor with just one sword. Was their opponent hiding his true strength all along? How is this possible? Luther widened his eyes in disbelief. Dustin actually broke the renowned Big Dipper array. Not to mention, he did it so effortlessly. Just how powerful was this guy? No way. The 7 top experts of Royal Valor couldn't defeat him. This guy must be on some kind of drug. Otherwise, how could he be so powerful? Brody and Oliver exchanged glances, their faces full of confusion. This guy is on a different level. Even Clement's face turned grave at that moment. Dustin wiped out the Big Dipper array so effortlessly. Not to mention he only used a sword. From that incident, it could well be said that Dustin was about to reach divinity. His martial talent must be extraordinary to possess such formidable power at such a young age. It was definitely a bad idea to provoke such a monster. The only thing they could do now was use all means to exterminate Dustin. Otherwise, if they waited another 2 years, even Clement wouldn't be able to suppress him. All disciples of Royal Valor, listen up. Surround him. Clement suddenly shouted. Yes, sir. Hundreds of elites from Royal Valor quickly surrounded Dustin. They faced Dustin, oozing a murderous aura. You people from Boulder Thorn are truly unreliable. I can't believe you're going back on your own words, Dustin said, looking at them with disdain. He was not surprised by Clement's treacherous actions. Those who resorted to sneak attacks when the disciples were in battle could not be trusted. Young man. Pardon me. Blame yourself for being too threatening to be left alive. Clement said coldly. Good. Then today, I will eliminate the entire Royal Valor. Dustin waved his sword, and a tremendous pressure exploded at once. Instantly, a howling gale blew up. His robe fluttered, and his hair stood on end. He exuded an aura of invincibility, as if he could defeat every one of them alone. Ah! Just as the two sides were about to erupt into a full-scale battle, a piercing scream suddenly resounded from the crowd. Everyone instinctively turned their heads and saw that a burly man with blonde hair and a foreign appearance had appeared out of nowhere. He was holding the head of a royal valor disciple with his bare hands. Ha ha! The blonde man grinned and then forcefully put pressure on his finger. With a loud pop, the head of the royal valor disciple exploded like a ball. His methods were extremely cruel. This is outrageous. How daring! Who is this guy? How dare he kill a royal valor disciple? He must have a death wish. Seeing this scene, everyone raged. Unanimously, they aimed their weapons at the blonde man. While internal conflicts within the martial world were one thing, all martial artists would unite when facing an external enemy. It was an unwritten rule. You bunch of weaklings. The blonde man showed disdain and extended his hand, beckoning the crowd to come at him as if inviting them to attack him all at once. How dare you! Several royal valor disciples were furious and immediately wielded their weapons. They began slashing at him. Clang, clang, clang. Accompanied by the sound of metals colliding, all the weapons that struck the blonde man were shattered. What? The disciples were shocked. However, before they could react, the blonde man suddenly made a move. Chapter 358. He slapped two of the guys hard on the head. Two loud bangs rang out the next second, and their heads exploded like watermelons. The remaining two individuals instinctively tried to step back, but the blonde man caught them and crushed their skulls with his bare hands. It was bloody, cruel, and savage. Onlookers felt their scalps tingling with horror. Attack together. Kill him. Clement's face darkened. He immediately ordered his disciples to take action. Attack. Over 100 disciples of royal valor shouted angrily and launched a coordinated assault. Grinning, the blonde man slightly bent his legs and jumped off the ground. Boom! The ground exploded, and a pit formed. Like a bullet fired from a gun, the blonde man directly landed in the crowd. Wherever he went, bodies were strewn across the ground, drenched in blood. Anyone blocking his path was brutally crushed by his unstoppable force. Ha ha ha! The blonde man laughed wildly, growing more excited as he killed the disciples. He was like a ferocious beast unleashed from its cage. The royal valor disciples were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They couldn't fight back at all. Beast! Stop this madness! Seeing more than half of his disciples dead or injured, Clement could no longer contain his anger. He shouted furiously and leaped up, delivering a full-force palm strike to the back of the blonde man. Boom! A muffled sound echoed. The blonde man's body trembled slightly, but then he casually turned his head. There was a hint of disdain on his face. How is that possible? Clement's eyelid twitches, and his face paled with horror. The opponent had taken his full-force palm strike directly without the slightest injury. Was this guy even human? Go to hell. Clement gritted his teeth and forcefully delivered a powerful kick to the blonde man's head. Boom! Another muffled sound rang out. The blonde man's head only turned to the side slightly, then quickly returned to its original position, completely unharmed. Clement was terrified by the scene. Cold sweat began to drip down his forehead. You weakling! The blonde man smirked and threw a light punch. Clement closed his eyes and instinctively raised his arms to block the attack. Boom! A loud explosion reverberated. Clement's arm instantly fractured, and his entire body was sent flying over 10 meters before crashing heavily into a tree. Blood spewed from his mouth. What? Witnessing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. No one could have imagined that Clement, the esteemed guildmaster of royal valor, who was halfway to becoming a grandmaster, couldn't withstand a single punch from the blonde man. What the hell was this creature? Terrified, the crowd scattered in all directions, not daring to get close. Who are you? Both astonished and scared, Clement laid helplessly on the ground. There was only one possibility for the person to defeat him with just one move. He must be a formidable grandmaster. I am from the Hall of Gods, bestowed with the name Ares. The blond man proudly declared. The Hall of Gods from Stroikwa. You're the god of war, Ares. Everyone was shocked at his introduction. The Hall of Gods was the most prestigious martial organization in Stroikwa. It was home to numerous formidable individuals, each with their own unique abilities and talents. Any one of them can wreak havoc wherever they go. Not to mention those who were bestowed with divine titles. They were truly unmatched powerhouses. Take the current figure, Ares, the god of war, for example. In Dragonmarsh, he would be considered a martial arts grandmaster and would stand out as one of the best among the grandmasters. An existence like him could easily overpower not just royal valor alone, but even if all 8 sects joined forces, they would still be unable to stand against him. However, Clement didn't understand why a top-tier powerhouse from the Hall of Gods suddenly appeared in Swinton. Also, why did he unleash such a merciless onslaught against the disciples of Boulderthorn? Chapter 359. Dad, what's going on? Why is the god of war from the Hall of Gods here? Could Sir Lincoln have crossed some big shot from the Hall of Gods? Both Oliver and Brody cowered in fear when they saw the man with blonde hair who was brimming with a murderous air. How the fuck would I know? Why are you even asking me? Luther gulped nervously and chided them. They had been there to ambush Dustin and had never expected to be assaulted by such a formidable individual from the Hall of Gods. This was mind-blowing. Your Excellency, I have never offended any of you from the Hall of Gods. Why have you come to massacre the members of Boulderthorn? Clement asked, his face pale with fear. What? Aren't you all from the West Lucosian army? The blonde-haired man asked with confusion. Huh. West Lucosian army. Were members of the Boulderthorn Guild. Clement exclaimed defeatedly. After all the mess, it turns out that the members of his guild died for no reason. Oh. So you're not the West Lucosian army. No wonder you're all so weak. But that's all right. There's nothing we can do about the dead anymore. I'll just take this as a warm-up exercise. The blonde-haired man laughed hysterically. Clement stood there, dumbfounded. But there was nothing he could do. He dare not retaliate either. This was a grandmaster they were talking about. He could kill them all as easily as one would kill an ant. Ares, stop messing around. Stay focused on our mission. Right then, the crisp voice of a woman rang from a distance. Immediately after, a purple-haired woman donned in full armor made her way towards them from the shadows. She held a sword in her left hand and a shield in her right. The shapely and sexy woman exuded an overwhelming aura all around her. You know that my power heightens along with the number of people I kill, Athena. I'm merely warming up. It's no big deal. The blonde-haired man chuckled. Athena. The crowd was once again astonished. Never in 100 years would they have foreseen the goddess of war from the Hall of Gods to be there too. This was another powerful god who was no less formidable than Ares, the god of war. Just Ares alone was enough to wipe out royal valor in its entirety. With Athena there, even if the 8 major guilds joined hands, they would stand no chance against these two. Come on out, you two. No point hiding anymore, Athena suddenly called out. As she said that, 2 more figures emerged from the shadows. One was a handsome man with his hand holding a bow and some arrows, and the other was a ripped and bulky man who was about 6.5 feet tall. Apollo of the Hall of Gods, the handsome man said first, not forgetting to flex his muscles. Heracles, the built man grunted, obviously not a chatty person. The moment they spoke, Clement and the rest of the Boulderthorns were utterly flabbergasted, looking ashen. Apollo, the god of sun. And Heracles, the god of strength. Well, fuck me. 4 of the major gods from the Hall of Gods are here. Are we doomed? The crowd was terrified. Ares, the god of war, Athena, the goddess of war. Apollo, the god of sun. And Heracles, the god of strength. They weren't just any other gods from the Hall of Gods. These were major gods. It was already a great enough deal to see one of them, much less all four of them. Who would have thought that all four of them would appear in one place together? This was truly shocking. These four put together were enough to go against the entire Boulderthorn Guild. How could this be? Why has the Hall of Gods sent so many major gods here? What's going on? Clement felt weak in his knees. Nobody could care less for the Guild Master of Boulderthorn when there were four major gods here. He was nothing compared to them. Oh no, we won't die here today, will we? Oliver and Brody were drenched in sweat and in a state of. Chapter 360. Both Oliver and Brody felt their knees start to buckle. Why are such legendary beings here? Luther's face was as white as a sheet as he lamented inwardly. Had he known that he would meet these masters here, he never would have come in the first place. Everyone was silenced by the presence of the four major gods from the Hall of Gods. An overwhelming, murderous aura permeated every inch of the place. The crowd stood idly in place, and no one dared to speak, move, or even so much as breathe loudly. At that moment, they knew that they were no longer in control of their lives. And the fact was, they weren't wrong. Not in the least. In the presence of the four major gods, their lives were as insignificant as ants. Beneath their fear and terror, there was also a genuine curiosity as to what exactly brought the four major gods there. Mr. Rhys, we know you're in there. Would you please come out to meet us? The four major gods stood in a row, and it was Athena who first broke the silence. How merry it is out here. Rufus walked out with a glass of wine as he laughed heartily. Since the Hall of Gods sent all four of you, I guess they're really intent on ending me today. Mr. Rhys, the Hall of Gods really admires talented people like you. As long as you agree to join us, not only will you walk away unscathed today, but you will also gain our protection. Athena declared loudly. Ha ha. From what you're saying, I gather that you're proposing that I betray my country. Rufus asked with amusement. We can give you everything that Dragonmarsh has to offer and more. You will be able to fully unleash your talents in Stroikwa, Athena persuaded unceasingly. I'll have you know, there are 3 things I'll never do. First, I'll never kill the weak, the old, women, and children. Secondly, I'll never put up with corrupt bureaucrats. And finally, I'll never betray my country. So, unfortunately, I'll have to disappoint you today. Rufus' smile remained as wide as ever. If you do not agree, then today is the day you'll meet your maker. Athena's gaze was cold. Are you able to kill me with just the 4 of you? Rufus took a sip of his wine. We might not be able to go to war against you, but there's nobody out there who does a better job at assassinating than us. Athena announced confidently. Cut the chit-chat. I can't wait to get things started. Ares laughed maniacally and began to move. With an agile leap, he charged toward Rufus like a bullet. Get him. With Athena's command, all of them charged toward Rufus immediately. Though all 4 of them were major gods, none of them dared slack off in the slightest because the person standing in front of them was someone worthy of being taken seriously by them. Major gods. Ha. I call bullshit on that. Albert, who stood behind Rufus, scoffed. In one swift motion, he stepped in front of Rufus and met the 4 major gods head-on. In an instant, thunderous sounds echoed from all around as fierce gales howled unceasingly and waves of true energy swept across their surroundings. The members of Royal Valor backed off as quickly as they could, lest they got caught in the middle. Dustin stood at the entrance to the medical center and squinted as he watched the battle between the 5 of them. The Rhys family had 3 great generals, namely the Sword Whisperer, the Executioner, and the Drunken Maniac. Out of the 3 of them, the Sword Whisperer was undoubtedly the most powerful. However, the most ruthless of them all was none other than Albert, the Executioner. Albert had reached peak-level Grandmastery 10 years ago. Now that 10 years had passed, he'd refined his skills so much more that he was on par with the 4 major gods. Oh my goodness. Who's this old fella? How can he hold up against the 4 major gods so well? Oliver and Brody were amazed by what they saw. From their point of view, the four major gods were deities who had total control during any battle. And when four such unrivaled beings teamed up and were still no match for an old man, it was truly mystifying. Damn it. I'm lucky I didn't barge into the medical center earlier on. I'd be dead meat if I did. Clement broke out in a cold sweat when he saw the ongoing fight. Never in his dreams had he ever thought that there would be such a powerful master in the tiny medical center. He wouldn't even know how he died if he actually went and challenged such a person. Hang on, the old man was someone from Peaceful Medical Center. And Peaceful Medical Center belonged to Dustin. Could it be possible that Dustin was somehow related to the old man? Ashen-faced, Clement dared not even continue his train of thought.